Mr. Cameron, we are now live.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Cameron, and I am the County Administrator. I'd like to welcome you to the first Flagler County Administrator's Budget Hearings. The budgeting process is probably the most important thing that we do. That is that we allocate resources to specific projects and operations, and it is necessary to plan those operations, and you have to plan them around available resources. The format today will be that our Director of Budgeting will give you an overview of the current financial challenges that we have and the budgeting process itself, and how these meetings are going to be conducted. We are televising these meetings because during the process of budgeting, it is necessary for the administrator to fully understand the planning process and to ask questions or to make notes that will be used in the development of the budget itself. We are televising these meetings to give transparency, to give the public and our county commissioners an opportunity to watch how that process really works. And we'd like to welcome everybody to the inaugural session. And with that, I'll introduce you to John Barrow, our Director of Budgeting and Financial Management. John?
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. I'm going to share my screen here, give a quick overview of the budget process. So these budget hearings will take place starting today for the next 3 days. And we start off in January and went to the board to create the calendar for the budget creation and the guidelines that we're going to be following to create the budget for FY21. And throughout February and March and April, departments have been working real hard with the budget office to submit their budgets with their requests from the county administrator. Here we are in May, again, just starting off these administrative budget hearings. Coming out of these meetings, the decisions coming out of these meetings will be entered into the tentative budget in June and presented to the board in July. The board will have all summer to discuss the tentative budget and make any adjustments or changes or inclusions, anything they want to do throughout that time, and to ultimately be adopted in September through the process of 2 public hearings. So this has already been gone over with the board over the previous months, just to show what the guidelines have been. The millage rate is going to be unchanged. We're planning on it being unchanged for FY21. We want to maintain our reserves at 5% of operating revenue in the general fund. We're going to continue to work real hard to build up our fund balance. Here we have a short-term goal of 10%. That goal is really 2/12 of operating revenue over the course for fiscal stability and financial planning. One-time sources will be allocated towards one-time expenditures. We are expecting and including in this budget a 5% increase in taxable property value. That's obviously just an estimate. We'll get better numbers as time goes on, namely June 1st from the property appraiser is the next milestone date. We're going to create a 5-year CIP with the first year of it funded. There's a resolution the board passed a few years ago that mandates that we give the COLA, the CPI for the previous year for a cost of living adjustment, and this year is 1.5%. And we're going to present a 1-year budget. So let's skip the one. Back one. So the funding considerations that we have discussed throughout this process is rebuilding the financial security for the county over the last few years. We've had hurricanes and certainly COVID we're going through now that have a large strain on our resources and our reserves. It's depleted them dramatically, so we need to work towards building them up again. It's a priority to the county administrator to implement the final evergreen study, which is in the process of being finalized now. And that's evergreen salary study. We want a recovery plan, obviously, for the to address the current and future issues that will come to us from COVID. Master plan for space needs, long-term sustainable funding for fire services, and coastline as well. We want to make sure we have that situated, since the beaches are so important to our community. So when we asked the departments to submit their FY21 budget, their requests, we asked them to submit their current budget, their FY20 budget, take away any one-time enhancements that they had, and increase things that they needed to increase that were mandated, contractual obligations, state mandates like Medicare, those kind of things, different splits that we have through the state that we're mandated to pay. County administrator from the beginning was consistent with his messaging of the fiscal stress the county's in, due, like I mentioned before, the hurricanes and certainly COVID. And although the journey is just beginning, we got months to go. We've made some hard early budgetary decisions, and the departments have put in a lot of hours of work. So we're certainly moving in the right direction as of today, and hopefully that will continue. I'm sure it will. Back in February, a letter was sent out, and information was sent out to constitutionals and the directors, saying that we're going to kind of split out whatever new money we are expecting from a property tax increase, and actually we had to factor in what we expect to decrease in, say, sales tax for the rest of the year to be for next year. And that pro rata share is what is going to be available to those departments for the increases that they'll have. So it was sent out, and as you see, the BOCC has 61% of the budget. So they'll get 61% of the available extra funds, additional funds, sheriff 30%, and on down the line. That, based on the calculations that we have, increase of 5% and some sales tax adjustments at this point, and this is very preliminary because the COVID situation has really put delays into projection of revenues that we would normally have around this time of the year. But we're expecting $3.2 million new. And you can see how it's split up. The board, which we'll be discussing the next 3 days, has just over $2 million. Now that $2 million is for FRS increases, COLA increases, all the increases that was discussed that were mandated. Again, a little over $2 million. So to review just real quick, the funding considerations, again, fiscal security, implement the salary study, and really just shore up our services for the future and our important items like the coastline and fire services. COVID, again, as I mentioned, really put a damper on the growth and the improvement that we were making. And there's a lot of unknowns, including what the state will do. We don't know. Will they meet? Will they change their budget? Will they? What will they do? What will the governor do? Will they push more unfunded mandates down to the local governments? All these things are up in the air and really unknown. That's why we cannot get tied into the numbers that I've mentioned, because it can all change real fast. Local impacts, mentioned already, the sales tax revenue, the small county surtax revenue, of course, and tourist development tax is expected to be hit pretty hard as well. So over the next 3 days, we're going to have these meetings. We're going to meet with all the department directors. Again, the culmination of these meetings will ultimately be the tentative budget, and then the board will discuss over the summer to ultimately get to the adopted budget. And here's today's list of folks we're going to be talking to, starting with social services, growth management, land management, library, innovative technology, ag extension, and finishing up with the airport. So that being said, we can start with the social services. And Ms. Joyce Bishop, the director, is here to discuss. But first, I'm going to turn it over to budget analyst Amanda Gilbert to give an overview of her budget. I give up my stop share. And Amanda, you're muted.
Do we have the book up, or?
I can put the book up. Just let me know when you want me to switch it up. There we go. Let me know when you want me to move.
You just go to Joyce's first page, the Social Services Administration.
There you go.
Okay, so as you could see, their budget last year, their total budget was $263,579. And the proposed this year is $298,638. That's an increase of $35,000. It's 13.3%. The reason being mostly just salary increases and benefits. Last year, they had a financial management coordinator that was not budgeted for the entire year. That is the brunt of the difference. So Joyce, if you want to continue. Joyce, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I tried to keep everything as close to the vest as I could. The communications did go up this year. We've currently spent $6,300, and we're only in May. So the 10,000 was due to a large increase in our communications. Our utilities, 67 is probably maybe $100 more. It's, as you can see, back in 17, 18, we were at 661. But always have to allow for an increase, and you just never know. Otherwise, pretty much I kept everything the same. Of course, we won't spend anything we don't have to. And does anybody have any questions?
This is, of course, just the social service administration portion. There's quite a few departments that Ms. Bishop is in charge of, so we'll go over those soon.
I just wanted Joyce at some point in her presentation to give an overview of actually what services are being provided for those funds that are being expended, number of employees, and just so the board and the public can have a good idea of exactly how those resources are being allocated.
Okay. The administration portion of the department is myself, our administrative assistant, my accounting clerk, and our financial management coordinator to be hired. It's a very important part that we need in this department. We have 10 senior services grants that we manage. We manage all the human services allocations and expenditures, the SHIP expenditures. There's I have to say that the senior services grants, the 10 grants, are a big, big part of the financial management needs. My time at this point in time is pretty much taken up mostly by the financial management, which is what I did before I became director. So it's an integral part of keeping all of these budgets together. I didn't mention adult daycare, and that is also, that uses parts of the grants, as well as we have, we deal with Medicaid billing and trying to keep all that money on the straight and
Let's go
narrow.
through each one of these if you don't mind.
Sure.
Got human services first.
Okay, human services. Amanda, you want to say anything before I do, or?
No, you can go ahead. That's fine.
Okay.
You're on a roll, Joyce.
I'm on a roll. Okay. Human services, as you'll see, we do get in revenue, we do get a $10,000 grant from the city of Palm Coast for utility assistance for city of Palm Coast residents for their water bills. And they've been giving that to us for quite a few years. And you'll see back in 1819, we had more than $10,000 because they have some plan where people can donate towards this plan. And if they receive more than the 10,000, then they send us the additional money, and then we can assist more people. It helps offset our emergency assistance program that is for rent and utilities. So that's a nice thing to offset things. There is in the expenditures here in the operating budget, we did reduce the postage by quite a bit, by $1,180, due to the fact that previously we were mailing HICRA notices out by registered mail. And it was ascertained that that is not a mandated requirement of HICRA and is not general practice by most counties. So we were able to take the budget down by that amount in order to save us some money. We pretty much everything else is at the status quo, and we dropped some other operating expenses down for this year. So that's a very bare bones part of human services. If we can move to the next page.
Senior services.
Well, no, okay, we don't have anything
Oh,
else.
you want to go just the next page here? Sure.
Yeah,
we go.
there we are. Okay, so here we are, state mandated medical reimbursement. This is this amount for 2021, the 1.3 million is estimated. We, the State Department of Revenue is required to give us the actual numbers by June 1st. I did touch base with them last week. They're expecting the actual numbers any day now. So as soon as I know that, I'll update Amanda so that we can fix that number. But as you can see, that's a $76,000, almost $77,000 increase. The deduction of the Healthy Communities $1,000. I have been with the county for 13 years, and we have never spent any money in that line. Nobody has ever asked us for it. I have so I said, let's take it out. And we have increased our indigent burials because, as you can see, last year we spent $9,000. The indigent burials are usually cremations, and that's at $500 a piece. We may need to look at those rates for next year, but for right now, that's for anybody that doesn't have anybody, that if the family cannot afford, there's certain guidelines, and that is a mandated expense. Then indigent healthcare, as you can see, we're running around 130,000, so we've left that where it is. Food pantry, so pretty much those numbers have stayed the same, and as well as the outside agency funding for human services, the Children's Home Society, Boys and Girls Club, Stuart Marchman, Early Learning, Family Life, the Free Clinic, and the school board. All that funding has remained the same.
Joyce, just real quickly, I would like to illustrate how some of the things that we are required. Let's go back up to the state mandated cost. Can you explain to the board and to the public what HICRA is and how that we never know exactly what that expense is going to be?
Yeah. HICRA is payments that we have to make to, we do out of county HICRA pretty much through Halifax and Flagler Hospital in St. John's County. We are required, if a Flagler County resident receives services through their emergency room and are admitted, we are required to pay for those costs. Of course, there are all sorts of eligibility requirements. The hospital contacts us to let us know that somebody's been there. Janet Nichols, our program manager, checks with them to determine their eligibility for it. We send a letter to them to tell them whether they are eligible or not. Of course, there are all sorts of timelines on it, and we do reimburse the hospital at Medicaid rates. So it is not usually, it is not a large amount. It's definitely not the billed amount. But as you can see with the comments, we are mandated to pay a certain amount per capita. And this account could go as high as $430,000. But history shows that at this point, knock on wood, 150,000 should cover us.
My real concern with this account is the impact of COVID-19. That the coronavirus could throw us a real curve there.
Yeah. My hope would be that my Medicaid reimbursement number is a little high, so we could shift some of that money down into HICRA in order to take care of that. Okay.
Thank you, Joyce.
Yep. Next page.
See, next page or senior services? This page right here?
Oh, okay, and this gives an explanation of what each one of the mandates, each of the state mandated and the public assistance and the outside funding, what they all do. Next page, please.
Did you want to go to senior services?
Yes, please. As you can see, senior services has a lot of revenue accounts. And what happens is we get grants from state and federal that come through Elder Source. They are the area agency on aging. And they allocate, and it's allocated based on the census, which the census is a big thing for us because it helps us get more money. And then I have to allocate this by grant program, and it gets spread over senior services, adult daycare, and the congregate and home delivered meal sites. So you'll see on each one of these divisions that there'll be a little bit of everything. So, and typically throughout the years, we have only hit the general fund. I mean, only, but we tend to see a lot of expenditures. And for example, last year, there was $760,000 in expenses, but it only cost the general fund $325,000 due to all of the grant funding that we get. And the grant funding is as I've said before, a big part of the financial management part of this whole department and division, in that everything has to be allocated. There are monthly invoices for every single one of the grants. And then on a monthly basis, we have to submit a surplus deficit plan. And if we're overspending, we have to explain how we're going to spend the money before the grant is up. And if we're underspending, we have to explain how we're going to make up that deficit. So it's a bit crazy, I'll say. It's the best word I can give you at this point. As you move down into the operating account, This is the in-home respite. This is where all the in-home services are charged to for 3E, 3B, Alzheimer's disease, the community care for the elderly. And what happens, you'll see these numbers jump around here. As you can see that they're up and down and all over the place. It all depends on who is enrolled in what plan. And my guesstimates are based on what we have right now and what I think that we're going to do. Fortunately, as long as we're within the same category, we don't have to do budget. We don't have to do budget transfers in order to do this. So it's that's a really fortunate thing. But having it broken out is, rather than lumping it all together for reporting purposes, this works out. Trying to break it out and determine where it's all being spent is very helpful for reporting purposes. And then you can see exactly where most of the money is going after the fact. Other than that, I think, let's see. Oh, I've increased the material aid because there was an increase to the grant for material aid. Material aid is things that we give, we assist clients with for if they need a microwave in order to cook the home delivered meals that we're giving them. If they need a shower chair to assist them in the shower, so that everything is based on trying to keep the seniors in their homes as long as they can, to keep them out of nursing homes, because the seniors do better when they're at home and around people. Next page. And this is just office supplies and equipment and things. And so look, I saved $550 in this account. And EHEAP is the energy assistance for the elderly. And that is, this number is usually whatever we've spent. It's like a pass through. We get last year, no, this year it was $13,000, and the contract was 84 pages long. And they gave us, out of that $13,000, we got $188 in administrative costs. And then they also give some money for outreach. So the money that's in here, this doesn't reflect the total grant, because this reflects only the crisis funds that we give to seniors to assist them with their past due FPL bills.
Go to adult daycare?
Yep, please. Okay, again, as I mentioned, you'll see that we split out some of the grant monies into adult daycare. And here's long-term care reimbursement and what we're proposing. We do pretty well with that. Now, the numbers this year are going to be down since we have been closed. There has been an approval for us to get, I have to finish filing some paperwork. They're going to give us a retainer so that they're giving it to all the daycares to help assist with a couple of dollars to keep them open so that they can reopen. Right now, I'm in some negotiations. They want to give me $1,000, and it's supposed to be an average of what we've been paying the last 3 months, and we've been paying $3,000 a month. So I'm checking on that. Again, our expenses are $300,000. Well, let's look at last year's at 1920. Our expenses were $253,000, but it only cost the general fund $69,000 due to the funding sources that we've gotten. It's all pretty much the same. And the other operating expenses in this account is primarily meals. They get the congregate meals as well as what Wickline gets. It's meals and it's supplies for the center. That would include thermometers. It would include blood pressure cuff, things like that, including and some additions to the menu, you know, juices, well, juice comes with the meal, but she'll pick up snacky things as well. And then we also purchased chucks to put on the chairs, you know, to save our recliners and things. So little incidentals, let's say. Next,
Concrete meals.
congregate meals. Again, you can see all the revenue sources. Donations are free will donation at the meal site. Donations for transportation, we received some of that. Meals on Wheels, envelopes go out to the clients that receive Meals on Wheels, and it's a free will donation. There's no copay required. Now here you'll see that the way things have been being allocated in the past, this program really doesn't cost the general fund anything. We make a little money based on how things are going. This is where we record transportation. Our transportation department provides us with transportation of seniors to the congregate meal site and to shopping trips, or in some cases, dropping them off at a doctor's office. Let's see what else we got here. Big utilities. Utilities are a big expense at the WIC line due to the utility. I expect the utilities to go up this year. Flagler Beach is discussing that. And again, in the 5212 account, that is that includes the WIC line and the home delivered meals. So we now have a walk-in cooler for to allow for expansion. Previous to this, we were using chest freezers, and it was limiting how many meals we could get out to the seniors. So we're ever trying to increase the number of home delivered meals to eligible seniors. Also, just to mention that we have received a grant of $89,000 for our meal program through the it's through Elder Source, who have received it from the Department of Economic Opportunity. We received $89,000 to get in contracts with local restaurants for during the COVID crisis that we're in. We have entered into contracts with local restaurants. I'd say it's probably about 9 contracts at this point. Took a little while to get it going. We are working with as many of the local restaurants to assist in their recovery as well. And that was one of the objectives of this money. And we are delivering to we're trying to get on board all the people that are on the state waiting list for home delivered meals. There are some people that aren't interested, but we're contacting everybody. And we are trying to give them 2 to 3 meals a day in order to be sure that they don't have any food issues and that they can stay safer at home rather than trying to get out into the grocery stores. And that's going well. It kicked off like the 2nd or 3rd week of April, and we had been up to 209 meals a day. What we are sending out, the number of meals we're sending out per week is more than what we were previously sending out per month. So we are looking at that. The other thing we've been told is that there is going to be another $138,000 towards the same objective coming through. So as you'll see both of those numbers on future board meetings, because it's unanticipated income, we'll have to put that before you to accept. Next department.
Social services grants?
The Safe Haven grant ended in 1819.
Okay.
The mental health substance abuse, in all honesty, this was something that Sally took care of. And that looks as though that ended in 1718.
Okay.
Veteran Services, pretty much status quo here. You know, they've saved some money here. Dave has reduced the grants and aids for combat duty tax relief, but we're also looking at one of the stumbling blocks for the grants to the combat duty military has been a disconnect with the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs, in that our Dave and Eric have assisted the veterans with applying for this tax relief, and it has to go through Florida State, and there have been a number of personnel changes, and I don't think it's at the top of their list. So the veterans are not being advised as to whether they have been accepted or not. And all they need is a letter that confirms that they have been in they've been in combat, and you know, certain stipulations, there's eligibility. So Dave is working on trying to get approval to be able to do that locally rather than having to go through the state. And we're pretty close on getting that through. So this number in future years may jump up, but for right now, based on past, as you can see, 1819, only $1,000 was done. So, and
Go to SHIP.
SHIP. What can I say about SHIP? We've been getting about $350,000 per year for SHIP, for the SHIP grant. We have been advised that there is a proposed number. As some of you may know, previous to this, the state was always swiping money from the Sadowski Trust Fund, which is where most of this money comes from. And we just got a proposed number of $1.19 million for state fiscal year, July to June. That's not etched in stone. We've given that number. They'll give us an official notice of it, but we have been cautioned that we don't really receive the money until around October, November, and it's based on doc stamps through real estate, I guess. And we're not first on the list to get that money, so we're not guaranteed 1.19 million. So we went with the 350 for now. As soon as I get the go ahead that we're going to get more than that, we'll come back to the board with unanticipated revenue, and we'll fly with that. We've kept operating expenses pretty much the status quo, and we are working on getting some things really moving with this program. Right now, we are assisting Flagler County residents with rent and utilities if they can be determined to be due to the COVID-19 crisis. We were given the okay to make that change to our program and try to help assisting. And the first day that it hit the press or hit the streets, we had 9 people calling like in a blink of an eye. So people are knowing about it, they're letting people know, and we're doing our best to help assist the people that are in crisis right now.
Neighborhood Stabilization Program.
To be totally honest with you,
Please.
to be totally honest, I don't know a whole lot about this program. I'm trying to find out some of the information, but based on the description is that this strategy is to acquire and rehab eligible foreclosed properties to rent to qualified households. The 25% is to purchase properties and rent them to the households whose incomes are not more than 50%. Apparently, we have not done anything in the last couple of years on this. I will be, so this is just money that is rolling over, and I'll be looking closer into this to see what we can do with that.
CDBG Urban Development.
And this is, sorry to say, due to staff changes and some other things that happened throughout, did or did not happen, I should say, lateness of some contracted services couldn't be put in place very quickly. We were not, it was foreseen that we were not going to be able to meet all the requirements of this grant by June 30th. Therefore, we were in contact with the department to discuss, you know, what we could do and what we should go with. And they didn't say it outright, but it was pretty much recommended that perhaps we would like to rescind the grant and reapply the next time. Ralston did write this grant, and he came out #1 in the state. And they couldn't guarantee it to me, but they did voice that if we were to reapply with the same grant, if that's what we wanted to do, there was a high chance that we would get the grant. Now, that was supposed to, they were supposed to reissue new monies in May or June, but due to COVID, they have not reissued that. So there is still that chance that they will reissue that and we can reapply, and we can hit the ground running, knowing what went wrong last time. We can hit the ground running right from the start, right from the get-go. And the other thing is that that's new money, but my guess is that with COVID-19, they may extend this current CDBG funding, and we may be able to get in on this and then maybe again on the other new money. That we'll have to wait to see what happens with that. So that's it.
Okay, that's all you got?
That's all I got. Is that enough?
That's, yeah, no, you have a lot of things under your purview. From a budget standpoint, just generally looking at, you know, you did a very good job. We very much appreciate it. There's some increases, some decreases. I think the biggest change was due to the Medicare or medical examiner was increased a little bit, and that was also shown in your burials. The burials went up, so you know, more deaths, and that corresponded to an increase to our medical examiner share. But that's really the kind of the big change in your budget. Mr. Cameron, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just, this department is a great example of the difficulty in the budgeting process that you guys face every year, that we have to make so many hard decisions based on incomplete or unknown data. And it's very tough. People wonder why you don't adhere strictly throughout the year to your budget. It's because so many things that you don't control change along the way. This budget is a real classic budget of hold the line, deliver the same services, nothing extra, nothing additional. And the cost increases that you see are uncontrollable cost for the most part. We will, over the next 2 or 3 months in this budget, as well as other budgets, look for efficiencies, look for possibilities of additional savings, and we will try to factor those in to our final millage recommendations and our final budget submissions to the Board of County Commissioners. but it's a tough job for the department heads, the directors. It's a tough job for budgeting every year, and this is just a piece of it here. There are so many things that we don't know. A lot of this budget depends on what the state does, and the governor has not yet approved, not yet signed the state budget. So that creates some additional challenges this year. Just like to point that out for anybody that's not familiar with this process, is to some of the variables and unknowns that we must deal with every single budget year, and this year perhaps more than ever. Thank you very much, Joyce.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from commissioners that are on, or the public? No? Okay. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
So if you have to, oh,
Yeah, are we live still? Next up is growth management, right?
Is Adam ready to go, or we're 45 minutes early for him?
Adam's in. I just brought him in, sir. Good morning.
Thanks.
Okay, so Adam Mengel, the Director for Growth Management, is here to discuss his budget now, a little early, which is good. We can continue moving forward. Ms. Lauren Shank, Budget Analyst, Senior Budget Analyst for Growth Management, can give you an overview of his budget.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
So can you bring up the budget page for me, please?
Sure.
Sorry. So the first that we're going to go over is Fund 180. This is the Planning and Zoning Fund. Inside of this fund, we have Planning and Zoning, and then we also have Code Enforcement. Overall, for this entire fund, there were not any notable increases outside of the COLA. Is there anything notable that you want to say, Adam? Or did anyone have any questions?
No, I think that's just the changes that we made with our distribution on the salaries. It's kind of the same story probably for a lot of departments. The bulk of our expenditures in this department in the 180 fund are personnel related, and so that you'll see the COLA and the increases going up. And so that what we had, the change here that you'll notice back a couple of years back, was with that half-cent revenue, sales tax half-cent revenue coming out of the revenue sources. And so what we did was we, because of that change in legislation, we balanced a little more correctly the contribution from the 181 fund to be handling some greater portion of the salaries within the 180. And certainly those duties are correct, and we feel that that was a correct move to make, consistent with statutory guidance on building code administration and those functions in our department. So with that, that half-cent revenue is no longer needed, hopefully, fingers crossed, to plug the hole that we had in the budget in previous years, and now closer to hopefully operating as a special revenue fund. Also point out our fee resolution that's out there, last update to it in 2012, we have had some discussions, but really no real interest or push in changing those fees at this time. We are talking about broadly the impact fees, but that's something later to talk about, not as part of this of the 180 fund, but just wanted to put that out there that we're comfortable, I think, safe to say, with our source of revenues and the development review fees, and not, I believe, overly optimistic. We're staying pretty busy throughout the COVID emergency right now. And what we are seeing is a lot of folks from the north are interested in coming here because of, not just because of the weather anymore. And so we're very positive about that. Thank you, Lauren. Lauren's done a great job on this, and I'll let her keep talking. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can go on to the building department. Adam did a great job, doing an overview on that one as well. But one of the major changes that he discussed was we did do kind of a reorganization on staff and what their duties really were, and we realigned them to make sure that their staff time was reflective of the departments and the job duties that they are doing. For this fund, and specifically the building department, notable changes are, of course, from the salaries. And overall, we did have some changes in maintenance, and also in the contracted services for Intergov and Tyler, which has been implemented in this department. And does anyone have any questions about the building department or their budget?
Lauren, I'm going to wait to the end. There are a couple of things that I did want to address. I did want to address just for a few minutes impact fees, and I also want to address the situation with state mandates on our building department reserves. I think both of those need a little discussion and clarification for folks that might be watching.
If I could add before that discussion that I think similar to what Joyce's presentation was, is that there are some mandated functions that we have. If we don't do them, they can be completed through an interlocal or now through a private provider, which is again some statutory changes that are out there. And so we're trying to adapt to the organizational changes in the broader world of construction inspection, and trying to be more customer service oriented. The Tyler software has gotten us somewhat there. We still have some bumps along that road, but certainly there's a mandated function that the county has in building inspections, and that the structure of that fee driven for the bulk of it, and then along with that, then the prerequisite steps related to planning mandated through that. And give a shout out to John with the plan on the capital improvements plan. I can't applaud enough our steps in that, and link that then to the comprehensive plans requirement. It's been out there for a while. It's been hard to pin down, but that 5-year CIP is going to take us very far. And so happy to have that coming online as a budget department goal, and went online with that, and whatever we can do to support those efforts, we will certainly do. Thank you.
Mr. Cameron, you mentioned the House bill. Over the summer, we were faced with a huge change that came from the legislature. It was House Bill number 447. And what it stated was that a local government may not carry forward an amount exceeding the average of its operating budget for enforcing the Florida Building Code for the previous 4 fiscal years. So in that was a huge change for the building department. We really did our best to, save up and build the reserves in this fund. With this House bill, we were tasked with spending money that we didn't anticipate, things that we wanted to gradually do over a course of maybe 5 years. We were tasked with doing that in a short period of time. We have been able to do a majority of those items. Some of them are still outstanding in this fiscal year. We did take an expenditure plan to the Board of County Commissioners that was approved in September of 2019. And once again, we are still working on spending those expenditures and getting everything squared away. But that was a huge change for this department.
Yes, that is one of the things that I certainly wanted to address. The finance departments generally tend to be conservative if administration allows them to be conservative. They generally are key in on the safest course of action. And consequently, because the building department is fee driven, qualified building inspectors are very difficult to recruit, especially in boom periods. If you aren't able to preserve your workforce when the building business starts to drop off, when it starts back, you find yourself not having the inspectors that you need, and things really start to unwind and fall behind when that happens. We had done in Flagler County a great job of being very frugal, very conservative in expenditures to build those reserves up to the point that when we had a downturn, we could preserve our workforce. Unfortunately, the legislature saw fit to limit the amount of those reserves that we could accumulate. And some of the purchases that we had put off for a long time, making sure that we had the proper reserves, we were able to go ahead and purchase those things because we had to reduce those reserves. However, we would have continued to work very, very thin if it had been our choice in order to flatten out the boom bust cycle for construction and building. You guys have done a great job with that. I am disappointed that the legislature made that move. While I've got the microphone, I'll talk just a little bit about impact fees. That is a problem that we are addressing now. We have contracted with a consultant, which is required to impose your impact fees. We did suspend a good many of the impact fees that we did have in place as a result of the financial downturn in 2008, and we never have brought those back. We can't really bring them back until we get a current study, which we're attempting to do now. But impact fees, for those that aren't aware of what they are, that every development creates negative externalities or impacts outside of their development. And in order to address those impacts, the impact fee was brought into existence. And suppose, just for example, on a transportation impact fee, that the impact of a development is going to create the need for turn lanes and traffic signals at an intersection a quarter of a mile away. The impact fee would allow you to address that. That has to be paid for. The only question out there is, do the people that are causing the impacts pay for it, or does the existing tax base or taxpayer pay for it? And most jurisdictions fall on the side of the people that are causing the impact must pay for it. But it has to be just, it has to be reasonable, it has to be a direct connection to the development. If you're going to improve an intersection, you must be able to demonstrate that that intersection improvement was caused by the impacts. You can have impacts for public safety, which is your sheriff's department, your fire department, your EMS services. You can have impacts for parks and recreation, where additional parks are needed for the additional population increases. You can have impacts for libraries, public buildings. There are all sorts of opportunities for impacts. They can only be used for capital investment. They cannot be used for operating. You can build to accommodate expansion. Perfect, for instance, is the sheriff could not replace a worn out patrol car. He could, however, if he put on a new deputy, could pay for his car, his uniform, and his gun. That's the way impact fees work. They are a critical part of addressing growth, and we're entering into a period of high growth. It is necessary for us to address and put in place fair and accurate impact fees in the coming budget year. That will be something that is put before the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for letting me take up your time on that, but I thought it was very important that the public fully understand that we are working to make sure that we don't address all these issues out of the existing tax base, that we're working to make sure that the people that are causing impacts or are needing services help to carry their load too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Do we have any public comment on these two departments? Well, three departments.
No, we've received no public comment up until this point.
Okay, so next up, I know that we have land management. Tim, are you on?
Tim is on standby. One moment while I drop and make a change here. Hold on a moment. Tim, you should be on.
We'll share.
All right, so just an overview for land management. I do want to thank Tim for being very proactive in assisting our office with finding alternative funding sources and also helping us with our priority of increasing our fund balance. That was the #1 priority for our office that we talked to the directors about, and Tim jumped in head first and has really helped our office out a lot. Land management oversees various restricted funds based on the geographic location. So you're going to see a few different budget pages based on those geographic locations. The first page that we're looking at is land management as far as their administrative staff. A notable decrease to this fund, you'll see that we are going to start billing ESL staff time. ESL is environmentally sensitive lands. And anytime that Tim's staff is going to be working on those lands, we're going to be billing staff time to it. Another decrease that we saw in this fund in the operating is in the contracted services. We are actually moving the wildfire prevention activities over to the ESL fund, which you will see on another page. And that is because it's a notable activity that can be used with those funds. Is Tim on?
I am on, sorry.
Okay, hi, Tim.
Good morning, good morning. And I appreciate the introduction. Just as a general overview, so I'm Tim Telfer, I manage the land management department for Flagler County. And a general overview, we do general land management work. This is work generally in the natural lands throughout Flagler County. There's a staff of 4 of us altogether. We've also got some other job duties that you may not see reflected in the budget. We have a number of projects that we manage. These are unique projects that serve the needs of the county. We also staff the environmentally sensitive lands funds. I do want to return to Lauren's introduction and thank you for that. Thank you very much. It was very kind. And just say for the record that we're happy to do anything that we can as the county sees fit to try to remedy some of these budget concerns. I've been here for a while now. I was here through the recession in 2008, 2009, and saw a lot of significant impacts to the county, to the staff, and to the county functions that reverberated for a number of years. I think the county, from top to bottom, in my opinion, is in a better position from a technical standpoint, from a staff belief in the overall mission of the county. And personally, I would really hate to see us repeat that process. So, as Lauren said, we're happy to do whatever we can to try to help out with the budget situation. So I'll walk you through our budget here this morning. As she mentioned, we have a number of discrete funds that we manage. These funds predominantly are tied to different projects, to different parcels of land. So they're not generally mobile. As we go through and we identify different parcels, I'll point those out and what the needs are on those project areas. But they're not necessarily funds that we can pick up and move around. And that's because of the way that those parcels were acquired. Either the state via a management plan the previous owner via title covenants, or some of the permits that are on these properties restrict the use of funds and restrict them being moved off site. However, whenever possible, we look for revenue generating activities, and you'll see some of those reflected in our budget as we move through. Just on our general page here, you see, okay, there's a general decrease. We'll move right to the first project. This is
I'm sorry, I was trying to keep up with you, but we can certainly stay there. I was just trying to read your mind, and I guess
You're fine, John. I'm actually ready to switch. I mean, the biggest thing
Okay.
there is we've done whatever we can to reduce the impact to the general fund and move a lot of our expenses off to the general fund or cut them all together. And we can switch to that Go for Tortoise fund, and I'll briefly mention that. This is a project that we manage within the land management department. We have about 30 Go for Tortoise vacancies left. For anybody kind of watching at home, these are our protected species. The county maintains a relocation bank where a developer can come or a county project can come and move this protected species to that bank. And we do charge a fee to an outside developer that wants to bring it in. That's the cash that you see on this page right here. Those funds are used over time for the management of that tortoise habitat. The biggest expense there is really trying to keep the canopy open. There's two ways that we do that. Number one is to prescribe fire, or on extremely dry years, we have to bring in mechanical equipment to reduce that vegetative load. And just for a little bit of an awakening of how dry things have been, we've only had 5 prescribed fires on county land this year. Normally we'd be at least double that at this time in the year. But it's been extremely dry. We haven't felt safe in conducting those activities. What that means for a fund like this is, rather than using a prescribed fire, which is a financially efficient way to manage that land, we're going to have to look at renting special equipment this summer to keep that vegetative load down. And we have to do that because of the permits that are on this property. So if we can switch over to the next part. Okay, Hawk Creek, this is located in the southwestern portion of the county. Geographically restricted funds, restricted by the management plan itself. The revenue that we've generated here has been primarily from the sale of the timber resources that are on the property. You see a big cut there for some of the security services that we no longer need, at least for now. Over the years, we've had some problems on this property with poaching and vandalism and other issues. That security service helped us resolve that issue. The last payment to the security firm was back in December of this year. I don't anticipate we'll need it in the upcoming year. Expenses are anticipated to be relatively minor. We're just going to manage for forest health there, and that's really treating Kogan grass on that property. Move to the next one. Okay, so this is the Bulow property located south of State Road 100 and east of Old Kings Road. The funds that you see on this property are really generated through a number of mitigation projects over the years and timber sales. Expenses associated with this project account are really the maintenance of the permits that are on it. We've done 3 mitigation projects with the Flagler County Airport that puts a permanent restrictions on portions of this property and sets maintenance obligations for the county. So our staff has got some expenses associated with that activity, but it's relatively minor. I don't, as you see, I don't have a lot of expenses listed on this budget page. Maybe this is a good time for me to point out, while you see a lot of money, a lot of cash in those accounts at this time, A, a lot of these monies are geographically restricted, and B, we try to be as conservative as possible with these funds because the opportunities to generate them are rare. They may only happen once a decade if it's a timber sale or a mitigation sale. Meaning we need to stretch those funds out as long as possible. We primarily use them as a match source for grants as much as we can to try to stretch them even further. So you're going to see some funds in these accounts here, and they look like substantial levels, but I just want to point out that we're conservative as possible with those funds. Next one up is the Malacompra easement. And this was a sale of some access walkover easements from some homeowners. The county land actually separated their property from the ocean. These are some people that were adjacent to the Atlantic Ocean. Back in 2012, we sold them some easements on this property. Again, those funds that you see listed on this page are just used for management of the property itself. It's a very restricted area, roughly about 25 to 30 acres in size. We are really looking at a prescribed fire and possibly some invasive treatment there. You'll see a sea turtle monitoring expense on here also. This is associated with the dune project. We are going to see reimbursement down the line, but we want to make sure that we have the funds in place to facilitate that dune project this summer. Next one is Hunter's Ridge. Large piece of property down in the southeast portion of Flagler County. We had security services out here that we've also terminated in this fiscal year. We do have to install fire lines, so you'll see that expense associated with this parcel here. We've got a financial assurance obligation because we've inherited in a perpetual management obligation because we've inherited a number of permits that are on this property. That was part of a series of agreements with the development of regional impact that is going on in this area. And there is a large amount of funds that are associated with this property, but they are geographically restricted. It's not something that I can release and you know, for example, we can't use them to offset expenses for fleet or the dune project, for example. I'll move on. Princess Place, this is the double-edged sword of having restricted funds. It's not an easy place to generate revenue. We have had a timber project recently, and it's generated some funds there. Again, that's set aside for match money. We are very focused on trying to maintain the flatwood habitat up in the northeast part of the county. And I do want to point out that we have a Fish and Wildlife Service, a federal grant that we're using on this property that has no match requirement. It doesn't show in my budget, but I do want to kind of give a pat on the back to our staff for finding these funds. We're doing a restoration project down in the southeast corner of Princess Place with those federal funds. And again, you won't see them in my budget, but I just want to take this opportunity to point that out. And next one is the Passive Park Fund. So this is the big one with a long story behind it. Generated from a mitigation sale to the airport, and it was essentially the some FFA funds, FAA funds, as I understand it, the Federal Aviation Organization funds that pass through the airport, and we actually were able to help the airport out with a project on their land. That set a large amount of money aside, and you know, the first use of these funds was for the cottages at Princess Place Preserve. That remainder sat in the Land Management Department account, and we're working with administration now to make those funds available to offset some of the expenses associated with COVID. We do have a little bit of the funding that we generated from that project set aside, and that's going to be used for our decision units and some flatwoods restoration projects that we have around the county. And then third is we intend to try to find some shelter for our vehicles to kind of keep them out of the weather and try to make those assets last as long as possible. And then the next one is our Graham Swamp. Graham Swamp is located between Colbert and Old Kings Road. It's about 3,000 acres in size. The county received fee title to this land from the Water Management District around 2014, but we had been managing it since roughly 2005. We have one primary revenue generating project on this land, although we do have some future planned timber projects. That revenue generator for us is a cellular communication tower. They've recently taken on a second tenant, so we see about $4,000 a month right now in revenue from this. And all those funds that you see on this page are again geographically restricted. They have to be used within the Graham Swamp property. And we can move forward. So this is a general breakdown of the budget page, and then we'll move to the Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program. So as I mentioned, we staff the Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program in the Land Management Department. We don't put a lot of anticipated expenses in here. We have some funds reserved for what we call access improvement projects to certain lands here. As you see, Ms. Shank mentioned some of our potential offsets to the general fund salary, and that would come from this fund as we work on environmentally sensitive lands projects. We'll be able to charge some of that time to the account here. Beyond that, you'll see the wildfire activities are moved into this account now. But when it comes to land acquisition, we don't generally have the opportunity to put them in the budget at the beginning of the fiscal year, just because we don't know what's coming along. It's very much an opportunity program. We do go out and we do target parcels that we think are a good fit for the program. But the majority of the environmentally sensitive lands projects these days are from willing sellers that contact the county and say, hey, I would be interested in selling my property. Is it a good fit? That gets reviewed by our advisory committee and ultimately approved or disapproved by the Board of County Commissioners. But it just makes it hard to put anything in the budget. So we kind of leave it blank and we do a budget transfer as we have one of those acquisition projects coming up.
All right, and Tim, you have a couple decision units.
Can we actually go back to that fund?
Which one? Environment essentially?
Yeah.
This
One thing that I wanted to note is that this program and this fund is 0.25 mils of the taxpayer's tax bill. Whatever is not required for debt service, we actually put into this fund. So it is not something that we can reduce. It is a set amount on the taxpayer's bill, and it does sunset in 2028. So it'll be up for discussion again in the upcoming years. But I just wanted to make sure that that was noted. This was done through a resolution 2008-53.
Thank you, Lauren. That's actually an important thing to point out. This is the referendum funds that the county taxpayers have approved 3 different times. And I appreciate you saying that. So we do have 2 decision units in land management. The first is replacement of our all-terrain vehicle. So our current all-terrain vehicle that we use right now is a 2007 Suzuki. We picked it up for free as surplus equipment from the St. Johns River Water Management District. We use it for 2 purposes primarily. Number one is it's a great vehicle to get herbicide out into some of the more remote areas to treat invasive species on our natural lands. And number 2, we use it on prescribed fire as a vehicle for a burn boss, the person managing the fire itself, to quickly get around the unit and keep track of everything that's happening at all times. So it's got a lot of wear and tear on it now. It's a 2007, as I mentioned, and it's had a pretty hard life. It's got some noise coming from the differential, and we don't anticipate it's going to be physically lasting much longer. I'm targeting that passive park fund that I mentioned previously that was generated from the airport mitigation sale. And we have a projected expense of $10,000 for a 2020 Honda to replace this 2007 piece of equipment.
Just to follow, you said this is on existing funding, like fund balance type of thing. It's not going to take away from that new revenue that we were speaking about earlier, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. All right. Number 2.
And the second one is a vehicle trailer. This is a heavy duty trailer that we are anticipating that over time we had targeted acquisition of an agricultural tractor. We've been looking at a couple pieces of surplus equipment that have become available from time to time, either from the Water Management District or other entities that are offering them for free. We're also going to keep track of any sales of agricultural equipment in the future. But I do want to pick up the trailer in this fiscal year. We're targeting a heavy duty one. We'll load our ATVs, our UTV, and other heavy equipment on it and be able to move equipment around the county more efficiently. We do have 1 trailer in our fleet right now, but it's more of a light duty trailer. So this would be an additional trailer for the land management department. And again, this is targeting that passive park fund that we've been talking about. This is not the general fund account, for lack of a better description.
Understand.
Good money, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Cameron, do you have any comments? Questions?
Yes, I'd just like to point a couple of things out. Number one is that Tim has done a fantastic job of managing lands. We have a very robust land management system that doesn't have an extremely large budget. So kudos to Tim for that. But Tim's leadership has created a situation where I can go to him for most any project that even touches his area, and I always get a great result out of it. I appreciate this process because it does give an opportunity to introduce staff from a different perspective to the public, and to let you know a little bit about what they do on a daily basis. There was about 3 or 4 weeks ago that I sent out a memo to all of my directors and department heads discussing our financial challenges that we have this year. And rather than arbitrarily assigning some figure to them to reduce your budget by 5% or some of those common easy goals that are used, we asked them to use their management skills and their leadership capabilities to resolve our budget challenges in the best way possible. And we get a positive response out of most of our directors and department heads who are willing to sacrifice some out of their own areas in order to make sure that the organization as a whole can meet its goals and its commitments to the citizens that finance all of this. Tim was one of the first and most significant of my managers to step up and say, hey, I've scrutinized my budget. There are things that we would like to do, but don't have to do. And we would like to go ahead and make those portions of our budget available to address the shortfalls being created by the COVID crisis. That's the kind of leadership that is exemplary, and Flagler County is indeed fortunate to have people like Tim Telfer looking after their interest. Thank you.
Exactly right, Mr. Cameron. Any questions from any county administrator, or I'm sorry, county commissioners or the public? Do we freeze?
Lucy, do we have any public comment?
I apologize. I'm on 2 Zooms. No public comments.
Thank
public.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tim. Just for planning purposes, we're cruising right along, which is awesome. Next up, we have the library coming up with Ms. Holly Albanese and Amanda, her analyst, coming up. And after that, that will conclude our morning session, and we'll start up in the afternoon session after lunch at I believe it's 1:30. 1:30. So with that, if Holly is available.
I'm here, John.
All right. So first, we're going to ask Amanda to kind of give us an overview, and then we'll go right to you. Miss Amanda.
Can you bring up her page? You wouldn't mind?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so here, as you can see, last year we've got about 1.1 budgeted, and this year it's increased $74,922, which is a 6.5% increase. But that increase is due to the addition of the security that has been at the library. So that's that contract there. Other than that, it's the normal salaries and COLA and whatnot. So Holly, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. I'd like to first start by just talking about the library in general. And in the last year, the library has definitely increased services to the community. Obviously, because of COVID, we've had to increase our digital footprint to the county. And we've been able to do that through some of the online resources, as well as video presentations by some of our staff, since we can't have any interactive programs at the library. But last fiscal year, we saw a 20% increase in circulation and about a 3 or 4% increase in foot traffic, which was great to see. But I also wanted to share one other thing, because I think it is a good thing to share with the community, is that if you look at the bottom of your receipt that you will receive every time you do a transaction with a library, it will show you how much you've saved as a result of using the library resources rather than going out and purchasing it yourself. And each month I get a monthly total of what that savings is for our community. And for instance, in the month of March, the overall savings was, let me see, $26,904, but the annual total, which started in October 1 of 2019 and through March of this year, is a savings of $3.9 million, which when you look at the cost to run the library system, that $3.9 million savings is huge when it's only costing 1.1 to run the library system. I also want to talk about briefly the revenue that we bring in. Obviously, because of COVID, we're going to see a decline in revenue this year. Last year, we were right on par with the revenue. Of course, it's very fluid. We can't predict year to year exactly what it's going to do, but we came pretty close. Excuse me, I apologize. I am working from home, John. I've been sick and I have a bad cough. So if I start coughing, I want you to know. So I apologize in advance. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring to your attention, some of the revenues are going to adjust this year. We lost our photocopy service in the library. The company that was offering that service, OmniCopy, went out of business and pulled their photocopiers as of December. And the way it worked is they would actually get all the money. We got 5% of the proceeds, but they paid for everything, the paper, the toner, they repaired the machines. So we had to look to an alternative service, and working with Jared and IT, we were able to get a couple of copiers that we're renting. But with the 15 cents per page that we charge, we expect that not only will we pay for the costs of renting those machines, but also bring in about $1,000 in revenue, which, to be honest with you, is about the same amount of money that we were bringing in with the OmniCopy. So I wasn't looking to necessarily make a lot of money off of it, but at least the same amount that we were bringing in from that copy service that we did have. The other thing that you'll see is we did have some book sales money, and we still anticipate some. I'm just not sure how much that will be. And state aid has gone down each year. That's dictated by the legislature. And so each year we have to wait and see how much the legislature is going to give to the state aid. But I want to say we only get the operations portion of state aid, and that's based on how you're funded. So the more the county funds the library system, the more money you'll get in state aid. And I just need to say that because I know each year sometimes commissioners get confused about that because they look at, say, St. John's and Volusia County and how much money they receive in state aid, and it's so much higher than what we receive. But again, you have to compare apples to apples, and frankly, it's based on our operating budget. How well we're funded will dictate how much we get in state aid. So on the revenue side, I do see a decrease this year, but I want to assure the county, even though there's going to be a decrease this year, it will not affect our current budget that we're in. We have seen some savings as well, because our print PC management service that we haven't implemented as of yet, we stopped with the old company. And so because we withdrew from the old company, we didn't have to pay them. And so because we've had that time frame where we didn't have the old company and we don't have the new company yet, we have a savings there. There was some savings in salaries as well because of high turnover due to low salaries, basically is what it is. But we've had some high turnover, which has really resulted in a savings in salaries. And also we've seen a savings in the operations. Utilities was down. And obviously because of COVID, we're not purchasing as much print material as we were. So there's been various savings throughout the year. We also, because of those savings, I want to mention that this year, to help out the county, because of the financial restrictions and everything, we were able to absorb the entire amount for the security at the library, even though it wasn't originally budgeted in our budget. There was about $60,000 owed to Allied for their services. And so the library was able to absorb that and pay all that for the last fiscal and this fiscal that we had. And I'm very grateful for that security. As everybody knows, we had that past homeless issue, which hasn't been a problem since then. And I think that obviously negating that has really been an integral part in helping us in getting the community back into the library. And that's why we've seen an increase in our circulation as well as foot traffic. So to this year's budget, especially for the main library, that's what we're talking about right now. We'll move on to Bunnell. The operations, as Amanda said, the biggest reason why operations increased was because of the addition of security. The other reason is because of addition of my legislative position that I now hold with the county. So there's some additional cost for some of that function. But I think that was offset because those dollars were originally put into the administrative budget. So I think that was a simple move from the administrative budget to our budget.
That's
so,
correct.
Okay, so that's what did also increase because according to what I had this morning, there was a total increase of about $77,000. 66 of that was security, and the rest of it had to do with travel and other things related to the legislative portion. So that's where that is. But I had, honestly, when you look at the operations from last year, it says 134, 467. My original budget before the legislative and the security was put into it was 129, 116. So it was an actual decrease of 5,300. I was cognizant of the issues that the county was going to have. So I did try to look for any savings wherever I could. But obviously now adding in the security and the legislative portion has increased our budget. And I think that's where a majority of that 6% comes from. So if there's no more questions on the main library, I can move to Bunnell.
Okay. Yeah, and after we do Bunnell, then we'll go over your decision units.
Okay, great. And on Bunnell, there was an increase, but a majority of that increase was for passport services that we started up. You'll notice internet access decreased. And I want to just mention on the internet access for the community's knowledge that the internet access for both Bunnell and the main library, the true cost you don't see there. The true cost for internet service for the library system is about $20,000 a year. However, because we apply for a federal discount program called E-rate, the federal government pays for 80% of that cost. So what you see under communications, internet access, is only 20% of the cost that the county pays for that. So the schools and libraries for the E-rate really is concerned with making sure that the community gets access to good broadband. And so we've increased at the main library, they have 200 megabits, and at Bunnell, I believe it's 50 megabits. So Bunnell had a decrease in cost simply because we had a change in contract with the vendor that we're using. And of course that in combined with the E-rate service. But mainly a majority of the operating costs and why that's increased is passport service and the photocopier. But let me just say this, the passport service and the photocopier are both revenue streams as well. So while you don't see the passport revenue, and that's something I do want to discuss, that I think we should be showing that revenue annually, that revenue will pay for any of the costs associated with the passport. So for the priority envelopes, the passport, the cost for the toner and the ink for the camera system, if we had to buy a new camera system, the postage for all of that, the passport revenue does pay for that. And of course, the fees associated with that DEX copy and coin bill vending unit will be paid with the revenue associated from the copies that we do each year. So, and then of course, there is the RFID security tags. Those are tags put into the books and other material that we have for our security system. We started tagging Bunnell about a year ago in anticipation of a new facility, so that once we moved everything over to the new facility, we of course would have a security system in the new facility. So everything would already be pre-tagged once it got into the new facility. So we did start that about a year ago, and that's why it's a higher cost. Once everything is tagged, there will be a smaller annual cost to just tag the incoming items as we purchase them. So that's really it for Bunnell.
Okay. See if we can get the library decision units up here.
Okay. Decision Unit 1 was really brought from the Library Board of Trustees. Our budget for materials has really been stagnant for the last couple of years. We've not really increased it. And as a result, the trustees would like to see a minor increase of 3%. They felt as though this would help with offsetting the increased costs of processing, shipping, and obviously inflation each year. If we don't increase it, it just means we have to purchase fewer items. So that's why they wanted to see the increase. So
okay.
That's number 1.
Number 2.
Well, this is a large item. As you can see, the library, unlike other county departments, has never had a vehicle. I've never requested a vehicle in the past. And as a result, I mean, obviously there's been a savings to the county because we've used our personal operating vehicles to go back, whether it's for meetings. But I think the public should be aware that most public libraries, when you have more than one facility in your community, they share materials. You don't purchase one necessarily the same item for every library. You do a sharing, which saves on materials as well when you do that. But by sharing, it means someone has to bring the items back and forth to each facility. Most library systems like Volusia and St. John's have something called a courier service that they pay for annually. We don't have a courier service. Actually, I have been the courier since I basically started working for Flagler County. The branch manager years ago used to do that. Linda Crago, she used to do that for a while as well. And the cost, when you look at the travel, I do not get reimbursed travel at this point. But annually, and that would be a recurring cost, is $3,300 annually. This does not include costs for conferences or meetings. And now that I have the new responsibility with the legislative liaison as well, there will be a lot more conferences and meetings that we have to travel to. So the opportunity to have a vehicle for the library would allow us a vehicle to drive back and forth between facilities, to the county building, to various meetings and conferences that we've not had before. I should mention that when we've traveled to conferences in the past, most of our staff was reimbursed by the Friends of the Library for our travel related costs for our personal operating vehicles. And if the Friends didn't have to spend that money on this kind of travel, that would allow them the ability to put that money towards more programs for the library. So I just want to mention that. The alternative, if you choose not to purchase it, is that it is possible we could use passport revenue to purchase the vehicle. But even if we use passport revenue to purchase the vehicle, there would still be a recurring cost of approximately $1,600 annually that would need to be added to the budget for operating the vehicle. That's the best estimate we can give at this time without actually having it and seeing what the actual costs are annually. So.
Okay. Number 3.
Buffing machine. This is something that the library absolutely has to have. It's something that we use. It does save money. How it saves money is by taking minor scratches and cleaning up the DVDs and audiobook CDs that we have, and we rent out basically to the community. And you have to understand each DVD gets about a total of 100 plays. But if we can extend that, that saves money, because if you're spending $15 to $20 on every DVD, depending on what the DVD is, or audiobook CD can be as much as $60 to $80 per audiobook. So if you're saving money, that does help. So $2,500 is not a lot of money to extend the life of these. And you can see that in the last year, we circulated more than 62,000 items, whether it's audiobook CD or DVD, that might be in need of repair or cleaning. The machine that we bought, we've had since 2014, so it's going on 6 years. Obviously, it's anything that's mechanical or technology related has an end of life, and this is getting to the end of life. The alternative would be is that we just would have to go without once the machine does break down, and or find alternative funding, a source maybe through the Friends of the Library. So
Holly, you mentioned that you mentioned in your justification that everything's starting to go over to the streaming media downloading kind of stuff.
right.
But that doesn't help your current inventory, which is really what this machine is to do, keep your current inventory up.
Exactly. I mean, eventually everything will go over to streaming, but what you have to understand is something that is in the movie theater comes out on DVD, it doesn't necessarily go into streaming immediately. So people will check out the DVD because they want to see it quickly once it's released to DVD. You know, we get them as soon as they're released to DVD, but it doesn't mean that they're available on streaming unless the community wants to maybe pay for Netflix or something like that. But yes, so it is for our current and future collection. And so we'll continue with that. But we are increasing our digital footprint. And, you know, it is possible after we purchase this buffing machine that in the future, maybe we won't need another one.
Okay. Number 4, laptops.
Yeah. And you can see the laptops were purchased in 2015 with an innovation grant that we received. Those laptops are used for classes that we hold. We hold a lot of technology classes. In the month of March, we held 4 classes. We have more than approximately monthly, we have about 200 people attend these classes. We've had issues with the laptops and they've had to be repaired through IT over and over again. So it is becoming a concern that these laptops are near end of life. Again, they were purchased with an innovation grant. I could attempt another grant in the next year. That's usually by December, so December of 2020. However, it's supposed to be innovative. And since we've received the innovative grant for laptops, I don't think that we would get this grant again for the same project. So with that said, this is really important to the library to be able to continue training the community and offering this service. And we'll continue, if they choose not to fund it, we'll continue until each one becomes unrepairable. But as they become unrepairable and we have to take them out of service, it limits the number of people that can participate in each class.
Last one is tablets.
Yes. Many libraries have tablets and offer tablets. They allow people to check them out. We don't have tablets at this point, except for our tablets that we have in the children's department. It's the learning kiosk. Basically, they're interactive tablets. They can't be removed, and children can play literacy type games. So those are the only ones we have. We don't have any in the library for use by the public or to check out at this point. We feel as though these tablets would could potentially be used for teen services in offering such classes as coding clubs. Other libraries are offering that. We could also utilize the tablets internally in the library. Staff could go out to the stacks and help people on the fly, basically. We call that just in time. So we're hoping to be able to do this. But again, this was my last one, as you'll see, of the decision units. So I ranked these decision units in priority. So this would be the one, if out of all of them, that I would say that we could probably go without this year, and hope to, once the revenue stream starts to increase, maybe get this again in a following or upcoming year. We could look for grants for this. So there are other alternatives that I would look to, but I wanted to put it down as a decision unit simply because this is something that other libraries offer as well.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Holly. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, not a
Mr. Cameron, do you have any comments or questions for Ms. Holly?
No, other than get well.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public, Lucy?
No, sir, we have no public comments.
All right, no other comments. All right. This will bring to the end the morning session. We'll start up again at 1:30. One thing I would like to say that the fact that I'm not saying much is really a testament to the directors and the hard work that they've put into their budgets and their submittals. So, you know, they're just done a real good job, and I appreciate that, and I thank them for that. So unless anyone has anything else to say, Mr. Cameron, you look like you're teeing up there.
Yeah, just if you'll drop by after the session to discuss the morning session, and then we'll get ready for the afternoon.
Yes, sir, we'll do. All right, everyone, thank you very much, and we'll reconvene at 1:30.